Welcome back to Silent Husband Club. We've missed you. Apologies for the long silence, life got in the way. But from now on, we'll be bringing you a new story every single day. What would you do if the woman you love came home soaked in secrets, with her lips stained by something not even rain could wash away? I thought I'd survived wars. But that night, I discovered a battlefield inside my own home, and I was the last to know. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and leave a comment. It helps the channel grow and helps you never miss what's coming next. A cold wind was chasing rain down the glass walls of my penthouse, each drop tapping like a warning I didn't yet understand. From the top of New Harbor City, everything below shimmered as if the streets themselves were holding their breath. I stood at the door, dripping from the storm, my coat soaked through, shoulders heavy from more than just water. The moment I shut the door, I felt it. That silence. Not peace, not calm, something else. An emptiness that knew too much. No greetings. No scent of dinner. Just the low hum of the city through glass and the distant hiss of rain. I took my time hanging up my coat, letting each second drag. Maybe I was stalling. Maybe I already knew something wasn't right. The living area was exactly how I'd left it, except it wasn't. Elena's tote bag was thrown carelessly across the leather sofa. Sketches, receipts, a glass jar of charcoal pencils spilled out like she'd been in a rush. My eyes drifted to the kitchen. The glow from the fridge sliced into the dark, lighting up a bottle of champagne, half finished. 2 flutes on the counter. One had fallen over, a silvery streak of residue crawling down the granite. Not lipstick. Not wine. Something heavier. I didn't react. Training does that. You learn to breathe slowly when the world speeds up. But inside, I was already clocking every detail, every variable. That's when I heard it, soft movement down the hallway. I didn't reach for the gun at my side. I didn't need to. I already knew who it was. I just didn't know what I'd be looking at. She appeared in the archway like a shadow caught between realities. Elena. My wife. Her eyes were glassy, her shoulders hunched like she was carrying something she couldn't drop. Her dress clung awkwardly, soaked, and not just from the rain. Her hair was a wet mess, strands stuck to her cheeks. And those cheeks, they were smudged with the same grayish residue I'd seen on the counter. My throat tightened. "Ethan," she whispered. Her voice barely made it across the room. I nodded once, calm on the surface. "You're home early," I said, like I didn't notice anything was wrong. But every syllable cut deeper than I let on. She looked down. Her fingers trembled as she touched her neck, like trying to rub something away. The stain didn't budge. I walked to her, slowly, no sudden moves. She looked like she might collapse. When her knees gave out, I caught her by the elbow and led her to the couch. "Sit down," I told her. My voice had that edge. The one I used in field briefings when failure wasn't an option. I poured her water, set it on the table, and sat across from her. The air was thick between us. She stared at the glass like it might explain her silence. I didn't ask her anything yet. I just watched. I'd suspected for weeks. Late returns. Strange perfume. Phone calls she stepped out to take. The kind of things you don't want to believe. But this wasn't just suspicion anymore. This was the moment the scales tipped. I reached for her tote. She didn't stop me. I opened it slowly, sketchbooks, receipts, and a small, matte USB drive. No label except for 3 printed letters, DVX. That was the first time the name truly settled in my chest like a weight. Dominic Vance. I looked at Elena. Her mouth opened, but she said nothing. Not yet. Her silence told me more than any words could. I rose and walked into my office. The laptop accepted the USB without hesitation. On the screen, a series of thumbnails flickered to life. Neon clubs. Strobe lights. Crowds moving like waves. And there Elena, my wife, laughing, leaning into a man's touch, not resisting, not hesitating. Her body language didn't say mistake. It said invitation. I clicked through the footage with all the emotion of a surgeon, cold, clinical. Until I saw the logo. DVX, the same one on the USB. I closed the laptop, jaw tight, and walked back into the living room. She hadn't moved. The water sat untouched. DVX, I said, standing over her. That's how you met him. Her eyes filled with tears. She tried to speak, then thought better of it. And I didn't hold her. I didn't shout. I simply walked to the kitchen, poured 2 fingers of whiskey, and stared out the window. I drank once. Slowly. Then I turned back to her and set the glass down between us. Tell me everything. She exhaled, her whole body trembling. But I already knew, whatever she said, it would never glue this back together. Outside, the rain hit the city harder. Inside, something had already broken. She didn't speak right away. Just sat there, eyes glassy, fingers curled around the edge of the sofa like she was trying not to slide off the world. I didn't rush her. Sometimes silence says more than panic ever could. She finally looked up, and when she did, I saw something raw and familiar in her eyes, fear not just of being caught, but of losing everything in one breath. I didn't plan it, she said, barely a whisper. I went there for a meeting. That's all it was. She fumbled, reached for her sketchbook as if it could explain away the weight of betrayal. They said they liked my designs. They said DVX was looking for new visual artists to brand their spaces. She opened to a page, hands shaking, showing a quick concept: light, structure, flow. But all I saw were smudged graphite lines that no longer meant anything. I said nothing. My silence twisted around her, coiled like barbed wire. He told me he could get my work in front of people who mattered, she said. Said I had something rare, something worth investing in. That all I needed was access. And for a while, I believed him. Her voice cracked. Maybe I wanted to believe him. I leaned forward, forearms resting on my knees, watching every tick of her expression. I wasn't looking for tears. I was looking for lies. I didn't know what DVX really was, she went on, rushing now, like trying to outrun the part she couldn't excuse. By the time I saw the parties, the people, the things happening behind those VIP walls, I was already in too deep. You kissed him, I said quietly. She froze. I saw the footage, I continued, not raising my voice. You didn't pull away. You smiled. Her head dropped like it was too heavy for her neck. Her voice came back small. I was drunk. I was stupid. I didn't think. No, I interrupted, eyes locked on hers. You didn't want to think. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Her lip trembled. I stood and walked to the window. Rain tracked slowly down the glass. My reflection stared back at me, a ghost in a storm he hadn't seen coming. I pulled out my phone. There was only one number to call. I hadn't used it in 5 years. The line clicked after 2 rings. Graves, came the voice on the other end. Rough, dry, like gravel and fire. Rook, I said. I need everything you can dig up on a man named Dominic Vance. Clubs, fronts, offshore accounts, known associates. Any operations he's keeping off-grid. I want it all. A pause. Then a low chuckle. Coming in hot tonight, huh? He said. Give me 10. I ended the call. 10 minutes. That's all I needed. I turned back to Elena, who sat there as if tied to the couch. The room around us, the place we built together, now felt like enemy territory. You're not leaving this room, I told her. Not until I say so. She didn't argue. 10 minutes later, my secure line buzzed. I opened the message and saw the dossier. Dominic Vance, 36 years old, self-made nightclub mogul, suspected laundering, political contacts buried so deep they bleed black ink. Attached, photos. Vance stepping out of sleek cars, laughing with foreign investors, drinking in rooms without names. And one more Vance, smiling under neon lights, with a woman beside him. Elena. Her face turned upward in adoration. I saved every file to my encrypted drive and walked back into the room. She looked up at me, fear blooming again in her eyes. I didn't flinch. I didn't offer comfort. I needed answers, and there was only one place to get them. I'm going out, I said, grabbing my jacket. Ethan, wait. Don't, I warned. Don't make me ask you twice. She sat still, the throw blanket pulled up around her shoulders like armor. I turned and walked out the door. The elevator ride down was deathly silent, save for the steady thump of my pulse in my ears. When the doors opened, the lobby was empty. My boots hit the pavement with purpose, the rain soaking through in seconds. I didn't care. I was already halfway to the subway. By the time I emerged in the industrial sprawl of New Harbor's southern end, the rain had shifted to a fine mist, more smoke than water. Neon buzzed overhead, pleading across wet concrete. I followed Rook's coordinates to a forgotten door marked only with a flickering sign, Night Watch. Inside, the bass hit like a second heartbeat. Fog blurred the crowd. Every figure a silhouette. But I found him. Dominic Vance. Tall, sharp-suited, surrounded by adoring strangers. And then I saw her. Elena. She stumbled into view, skin pale, the same gray smudge still on her throat. She looked like she'd drowned and walked out of the river. Her eyes were wide, lost. She collapsed against the wall. I moved before I could think. Crossed the floor. People parted like instinct. She was cold. Wet. Barely upright. I pulled her close, held her by the waist, whispered her name. Elena. Why are you here? I followed you, she murmured, her words trembling. I had to know. Above us, Dominic froze. His eyes locked on mine. He didn't smile. Not this time. I stood between them, holding her, dossier in hand. This ends now, I told him, voice low. A promise, not a threat. Outside, the storm circled the city like wolves in the dark. The music inside Night Watch died like a cutthroat. One sharp flick, and all that was left was the electric hum of tension and 1,000 held breaths. Spotlights blinked to life, flooding the club in a harsh white glow that stripped every shadow bare. I moved Elena into the center of the stage floor, keeping one hand steady on her back, the other brushing against the concealed pistol under my jacket. She was trembling. Her heels clicked on metal, her hair plastered to her cheeks, the hem of her dress soaked and stained. Across from us, Dominic Vance straightened, adjusting his cufflinks like this was just another night, another deal to manage. He smiled, not kindly, not cruelly. A calculated curve. "Mr. Graves," he said, his voice carrying across the speakers as if he owned the walls. "Didn't expect this kind of entrance." Cameras blinked red in every corner. Phones were already up. The audience, once dancing and careless, now stood frozen, eyes flicking between us like they knew something real was about to happen, something no DJ could spin their way out of. "This is my wife," I said, voice quiet but amplified through the mic I'd taken from a tech just moments before. "Elena Graves." Gasps. A ripple moved through the crowd like electricity. People turned to each other, whispering. Vance's expression shifted, the cool mask cracking just slightly. He stepped forward, ignoring the tight circle of bodyguards hanging back. "Your wife," he repeated. "That's interesting. Because she didn't look like anyone's wife the last time I saw her." I didn't move. I didn't blink. I let his words hang in the air like poison mist. Then I raised the camera in my hand, a compact, military-grade model. Click. Flash. One shot was all it needed. Every mounted camera blinked. Lights dimmed, and the massive screen behind Dominic flared to life. First frame, Dominic handing Elena an envelope. Next, Elena slipping cash into his hand. Then, a series of stills with timestamps, messages, bank transfers. $3000. $5000. Promises of exposure. Privileged access. Contacts in the art world. All of it traced. All of it real. The crowd turned against him in a heartbeat. Dominic's smirk faltered. That could be anything, he tried. Charity. A gift. Hospitality. Sure, I said. Hospitality that includes buying her work, then taking her upstairs into the dark. A voice crackled through the club's PA system. Live feed intercepted. External stream initiated. More images filled the screen. Surveillance angles from private rooms. Hidden microphones. Snippets of conversations. Dominic's voice, promising power in exchange for loyalty. Promising everything, expecting everything. I stepped closer, the weight of silence pressing against us all. "You manipulated her," I said, "and you sold access like a goddamn auctioneer." Dominic raised his hands, playing innocent. "You can't prove coercion." "I don't have to." I tapped the last slide. Elena's transfer records. Her messages nervous, apologetic. His replies commanding, transactional. That's when the doors at the back burst open. A man in a tailored suit stepped through, badge gleaming at his hip. "FBI," he barked. "Everyone stay where you are." The bass died completely. Patrons froze. Even the bartenders stiffened. Dominic's face drained of color. The agent marched straight to him. "Dominic Vance. You are under arrest for money laundering, operating an unlicensed gambling ring, and conspiracy to exploit individuals through coercive access-based models." Vance didn't fight. But his eyes locked onto mine as the cuffs clicked shut. And in that look, I saw something dangerous, not fear. Promise. As the agents led him off stage, I turned to Elena. She collapsed to her knees, shaking from adrenaline and humiliation. I knelt beside her, wrapping an arm around her. The agent paused before disappearing. "Thank you for your cooperation, Mr. Graves. Your evidence was instrumental." I nodded once. Didn't say a word. When the club lights flickered back on, it was like someone had lifted a spell. People moved, whispered, scattered. I helped Elena to her feet and we walked through the crowd like ghosts. Outside, the air was heavy with rain and sirens. We got into the cab in silence. She leaned her head against the window, watching the streets blur into streaks of red and blue. I stared straight ahead. My mind was already racing. I thought it was over. But the storm, the real storm, hadn't even begun. The cab ride back to the penthouse was dead quiet. Elena didn't speak, and I didn't ask her to. She kept her face turned toward the window, watching the city slip by like a life she was no longer sure belonged to her. But I wasn't watching the city. I was watching reflections. Watching shadows. Watching for anything that didn't belong. Because something about tonight still felt unfinished. When we finally stepped into the marble lobby, the doorman gave me a polite nod, but there was something different in his eyes. Like he'd seen something. Or someone. But he didn't speak. Didn't even blink. I walked Elena to the penthouse, opened the door, and let her in first. She moved like someone sleepwalking through the remains of a dream, the wrong kind. I closed the door behind us and locked it twice. The lights inside were low. Everything exactly where I left it. Or so I thought. She dropped onto the couch and wrapped herself in the throw from earlier. I walked to the bar, picked up the glass of whiskey I'd left untouched. The ice had melted. The burn was gone. I sipped it anyway. That's when I noticed it. A feeling more than a detail. Something off. I crossed the room and opened the valet tray by the door, keys, wallet, badge, all where they should be. But as I brushed the edge of the console table, my finger caught on something nearly invisible, a tiny curve of plastic tucked underneath the lip. I pulled it free. A micro camera lens. No bigger than a pencil eraser. No blinking light. No signal. Just dust and raindrops along the casing, like it had been hidden for days. Weeks, maybe. My stomach dropped. I pulled my phone from my pocket. One unread message. I know what you did to Dominic. Now I know everything about you. No number. No name. Just a whisper from the dark. I stared at it, the words burning into the back of my mind. Whoever this was, they had been inside. They had watched us. They had seen more than I was comfortable letting anyone see. I placed the camera into an evidence bag and pocketed it. Then I turned to Elena. She looked up, her eyes red-rimmed, lips parted like she already knew the next words would change everything again. "We have to go," I said. She swallowed. "Ethan." "Now," I added, voice colder than I intended. "Don't argue." She didn't. I handed her a small duffel bag and instructed her to take only what she needed. Essentials. Nothing traceable. In another bag, one I kept prepared for years, I handed her water, medical supplies, burner phones, cash, backup IDs. "Rook's safe house," I said. "I'll meet you there." She blinked, but nodded. Her hands trembled as she zipped the bags. I moved to the balcony and checked the alleyway below. A black SUV idled at the curb, engine humming, the lights off. Not a cab. Not a delivery. Someone watching. I double-locked the balcony door and turned to her. "You'll take the back exit. Service alley. Rook's driver will pick you up." She stared at me, terrified. "What about you?" "I'll come another way. Just get there. Don't stop. Don't speak." She vanished into the corridor, and I slipped out the window onto the fire escape. The rain was colder now, sharper, like needles against my skin. Halfway down, I paused. The SUV's headlights flicked on for a split second. A silhouette behind the wheel didn't move. Just watched. This was a trap. Not the first. Not the last. I dropped the final rung and rounded the building's corner, ducking behind crates until I saw Elena reach Rook's car. The driver gave a silent nod. She climbed in. I waited until they were gone. Only then did I breathe. 15 minutes later, I slipped through the side entrance of a warehouse near the East River. Inside, the shadows were long and the light dim, cast by lanterns and old bulbs barely clinging to power. Rook's safe house. The only place I still trusted. Elena was already there. She looked up when I entered, her face pale, but steadier now. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. I locked the door behind me and pressed my back to the cold steel. We stood like that for a while. Breathing. Thinking. Listening. But even surrounded by concrete and iron, I felt it. The storm hadn't stayed outside. It had followed us in. The safe house was supposed to be invisible. A forgotten warehouse on the edge of Black Line Bay, shielded by industrial sprawl and decades of silence. No cameras. No signals. No memories. Rook had chosen it precisely because it didn't exist on any modern blueprint. But as I stood by the door, the weight of the microcamera still in my pocket, I realized something terrifying. Nothing is invisible anymore. Not to the right eyes. Not to the right enemy. Elena moved closer. She laid the bag down on an old wooden crate and pulled out a flask of water. Her hand still trembled slightly, but there was something in her eyes I hadn't seen since the first time she showed me her art, a quiet resilience. "Are you okay?" she asked, voice low, but steady. I pulled the microcamera from my pocket and handed it to her. "Someone planted this inside our apartment," I said. "We were watched. Carefully. Quietly. Probably for weeks." She took it, turned it over in her hand like it might bite her. "Who would do that?" she whispered. "And why?" I studied her expression. No flicker of deceit. Just confusion. Fear. I nodded slowly. "I don't know." But they didn't just watch us. They sent a message. No name. No trace. Just a sentence that makes it clear they know about what happened with Dominic. And they know me. She set the camera down. I crossed to the rusted table in the back corner and laid the lens in the center like evidence in a crime scene. The single bulb above it swung gently with every breath of wind through the vents. "They knew where to hide it," I murmured. "Someplace only I would eventually find. Not Rook. Not Elena. Me." Elena stepped closer. Her presence was still delicate, but she didn't retreat anymore. "So what do we do now?" I looked at her, exhaled. "We go on offense." She blinked. "You mean draw them out?" I nodded, already reaching for one of the burner phones Rook had provided. "We make them move. We force a mistake." I typed a message, deliberately short. No threats. Just clarity. "So, you know me. Now I know you. I'm ready to play. E.g." I hit send before she could protest. Seconds later, the reply came. "Good. You always were predictable. Tomorrow, 9 p.m. Pier 47. Come alone." Elena inhaled sharply as she read it over my shoulder. "Pier 47?" she asked. I nodded. Classic trap. Abandoned shipping yard. No cameras. No lights. One road in. One way out. Her voice trembled. You're not going alone. I shook my head. You need to stay hidden. Someone already tried to get to you once. I'm not letting them try again. She placed a hand on my forearm. I won't let you walk into this alone. I softened slightly. Just slightly. You have to, I said. If this is someone from my past, then it's my burden to end it. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay on a cot in the corner, staring up at the corrugated ceiling, listening to the rain beat a steady rhythm of war drums overhead. At sunrise, I packed light: one pistol, 2 magazines, a blade, the burner phone, and the evidence. The micro camera. The files. The secrets I hoped to bury for good. By 8 p.m., I stood at the edge of Pier 47, the old cranes rising overhead like rusted skeletons from another age. The wind rolled off the bay, sharp and salt-bitten. The place was deserted, at least on the surface. But I could feel eyes. Watching. Waiting. Measuring. At exactly 9 p.m., a figure stepped out from behind a container. Slender. Hooded. Calm. No words. Just a small envelope dropped at my feet. Open it, they said. The voice froze my blood. Not because it was strange, but because it wasn't. Because it sounded like home. The voice sliced through the salt-thick air like a memory I hadn't asked for. Soft. Familiar. Anchored in a past I had buried deep enough to call it dead. My fingers tightened around the envelope as I stared at the hooded figure under the floodlight's dim corona. Something in my chest twisted, not fear, not recognition, but the sick anticipation of something too big to be coincidence. I crouched slowly, picked up the envelope, and peeled it open with steady hands. Inside was a single photo, me, at a gravesite. Not recent. Not staged. A real photo, taken years ago. And behind me, blurred but unmistakable, a shadow I had once believed was gone forever. He stepped into the light. The hood fell back. And there he was. Nathan Graves. My brother. My ghost. My curse. I felt the breath catch in my throat. You're dead, I said, more to myself than to him. He stepped forward, that same tight jaw, those familiar eyes, only now harder, darker, cracked with time and judgment. No, he replied, calmly. I've just been watching. Cleaning up the messes you didn't even know you made. The world tilted. All that rage, grief, guilt I'd stored up over the years, mourning him, carrying the weight of his so-called sacrifice, it shattered like glass at my feet. Afghanistan, I whispered. The explosion. You bled out in my arms. He shook his head. I faked it. Had to. There were bigger things than both of us at play. I had to disappear to finish what we started. You were never meant to know. I took a step back, like his presence was poison in the air. You let me believe you were gone. You let me drown in that for years. His voice was steady. Measured. And what have you done with it? Tell me, Ethan. What did you become when I left? I didn't answer. Because the truth was, he already knew. He had the files. The videos. The surveillance. He had seen it all. Suddenly, from the shadows behind us, a weak groan echoed through the metal. I turned sharply, flashlight slicing through the dark. There, slumped beside a rusted crate, was Dominic Van's bloodied, beaten, barely breathing, his shirt stained and torn. "He brought me here," Dominic gasped. "Told me I was bait." I turned back to Nathan, my voice low. "You used him." "He was already compromised," Nathan replied. "I just redirected the fall. You wanted me here. You wanted this." "I wanted to know," he said, eyes narrowing. "If you would come for justice or vengeance." My mind spun. My brother, long thought dead, was now judge, architect, executioner. And I had walked into his courtroom. I moved toward Dominic. "He's barely alive." Nathan didn't flinch. "Then make a choice. End it. Or let him stand trial. Just know, whatever you choose, someone is watching. Someone bigger than him. Bigger than us." I stared at Dominic, pathetic now, no trace of the predator he had once played. Then I looked back at my brother. "Why now?" I asked. "Why reveal yourself?" He held up a flash drive. "Because they're coming for you next. And because you're the only one who knows how to survive what's coming." I took the drive, my hands still shaking. Nathan stepped forward, placed a hand on my shoulder, solid, warm, painfully real. "Forgive me for what I did," he said. "And for what I still might have to do." Then, in the flicker of a light, he was gone, slipped into the shadows like a phantom of his own making. I turned back to Dominic. Every breath he took was a rattling countdown. I reached into my coat, pulled out the zip ties, and secured him to a rusted pipe. "You're going to answer for everything," I said, not sure if it was a promise or a lie. Outside, the rain had stopped. Dawn crept in, pale and ghost-like, over the bay. Hours later, I stood back in my penthouse. Alone. A note from Elena waited on the table. "I saw who you became. I can't follow you into the dark. Goodbye, Ethan." I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just stared at the city that had taken everything and handed me a war in return. I inserted the flash drive into my laptop. One file. Declassified /_report.pdf. As the screen lit up, I understood this wasn't the end. This was the opening act to something far worse. The past hadn't just returned. It had come armed. Thank you for watching. If this story touched you, shocked you, or simply made you think, don't keep it to yourself. Leave a comment, your thoughts, your story, your truth. Subscribe for more raw, real, and unforgettable confessions. And if this story made you feel seen, share it. Someone else might need to hear it too. You're not alone here. This channel is a safe space for those who've been betrayed, broken, and rebuilt.